Okay, are we back? I think we're back. Holy smokes. Yeah, it's funny how you just start okay and then laptop twice now. Seems to be holding. Okay, I can see the stream already on YouTube. Hopefully this will be the time. This will be the good one. I'm gonna keep a close eye on OBS to make sure that nothing breaks. I apologize for the inconvenience. Next time, I just noticed that you can just keep the stream going and just end the broadcast on OBS, and that will prevent me from having to broadcast to live transmissions on YouTube. I didn't know I could do that. I'm gonna do that next time if this ever happens again, just so that everyone watching on the previous one will stay on the previous one. It's just a mess. We have to learn on the go. Let me go back, bring the chat back because I can't see it in here. Okay, yeah, I think that we're good now. Fortunately, we lost everyone on the process. Now I have to rearrange everything because, like I said, I restarted. And by everything, probably it's just a chat scene. Yes. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'll re-enable the chat. 1 second. All right, much better. Hey Oliver, how you doing, man? You got in just in time because I just had like complete meltdown on my computer. So this is my third attempt, actually. Glad to have you here, man. Okay, I'm gonna treat this one as if nothing ever happened. We are just starting again. So let's do it. Let's just restart. All right. Bring this over here. And we are doing more testing. Last week we ended on the create new pet. I'm sorry for everyone that just saw me talk about this before, but like I said, we need a redo. So I was working before everything went to the crap. I was working on this validate form errors, and that one's passing now. All I did was create a new, basically take this test from here, the create new path and just assert the opposite. Let me show you. This one here, the create path, we create a new path and we mount the component, fill the form, and then call the create event, and then we assert that we don't have any form errors. But in this case, on the validation test, we create a new path or make a new path, mount the component, fill the form, just the name in this case with the path name, call create, and then we assert that the form has errors, and also assert that the record is missing in the database. So this one's working now. And now I'm working on retrieving the pet data and making sure that the component's form is filled out with the pet data appropriately. So right now I just created a new pet in the database with create. Then I'm mounting. By the way, I was making sure because in all of the previous tests, and according to Livewire version 3 documentation, we are using Livewire, the Livewire facade, for testing Livewire components. But the documentation Filament is using this Livewire function, which I think, and I might be mistaken, but I think it's from the previous version of Livewire. Again, like, I think this is not going to work, and I just wanted to demonstrate and make sure that I'm actually correct, because if I try to do this with this Livewire function, I'm guessing it's going to tell me this function doesn't exist. But I want to just do it once for you to see it, and then I'll go back to the facade. So I just passed in filling the record, the record property on the edit pet Livewire component. I'm setting that with the get route key, which is going to give me the ID of the model that is being used for model route model binding, and that's something similar that we're doing here. If we use get route key, and for example the model is using a slug for determining or grabbing the record from the database, then that's what's going to be used. And if it's using an ID in this case, that is going to work as well. So that using get route key is just to prevent or anticipate the use of any other field in the model for model route binding, like a slug. So this will give me the record, and then I'm using assert form set, checking that the name and the date of birth has been properly set in the form. And I just need to use type last. Oh, use pet date of birth. Oh, hold on. Okay, I'm just going to finish this because I just remembered that I sent a tweet with the wrong link. So I have to fix that. And then pet type. And if I run this now, it should fail, but it should fail because of the Livewire function. Let me just double check. Yep, there you go. Call to undefined function, pass Livewire. So this function does not exist. And we're gonna fix that in a minute. But first, let me fix the mistake on the tweet that I just sent. And I'm gonna keep calling it tweets, no matter what. Let me grab the picture here and then grab the link to share. and then post this. All right, that should do it. Let me go back to localhost. Probably this is not working anymore. Yeah, it's not. But we don't need it for the time being. We are running tests only, so that should be okay. Okay, so yeah, the documentation on Filament is using this Livewire function, but that Livewire function is no longer applicable with the latest version of Livewire, version 3. So instead, when you're following the documentation, you have to adjust and use the Livewire facade according to the documentation in Livewire version 3. So right now I'm following this example here, but this is not going to work. So instead, let's go back and change this to use Livewire test, like so. And I'm going to go up and remove this function. Okay, let's test this one. Let's run it, and we have a failure. Fail asserting that matches expected. Using a carbon object. So it's failing on the date. What if I don't test the date for now, just to double sure that this is, just to check. Let's assert that the form has at least the name type, and then work on the date of birth. Probably have to just format this appropriately. But let's sure. Hey, hey Shane. Yeah. What a morning, man. Has that ever happened to you in any of your live streams, that your computer just shuts down and decides that it's not gonna work anymore? That just happened to me twice. Super fun. It can retrieve, fail to assert that dog matches expected type object. Hi Amit, thank you for coming back. It is working now. Yes, it is fun because I can't say that has happened to my computer, but brain has certainly had that happen a few times. Yeah. My brain did shut down for a minute there. Indeed. It's fun because it started fine, and I could see OBS just saying, yeah, everything is fine, everything is peachy, just continue. And I focus on the code, and then Amit tells me that the stream has been paused for 5 minutes, and I'm like, what? And yeah, it was red, and I had to restart my laptop twice. I think it was because it is a good laptop, but it does get a little hot. And I do have like one of those laptop fans that it was disconnected though. So I plugged that in, restarted a couple of times, and then connection is holding now. So I think that was a problem, maybe an overheating thing, but I don't know. Let's see. Where are we? Oh, a dog matches expected type object. I don't know what this is about. So this is about the type. So it's giving me an object as the type. I'm guessing that has to do with the pet type being casted as an enum. So it is expecting doc lowercase. What kind of specs? I would have to come, well, from what I can see, I have like 16 megabytes of memory, and it's an AMD chip, an AMD chipset, but it's a good computer. I mean, it's actually it's a Lenovo Legion, one of the new ones. But yeah, I should hold on. I don't, maybe it's just one of those random things from the universe. Maybe carbon parse. I don't have to carbon parse it because I'm casting it as a datetime, but I think that's a problem because I am, for example, type, this is being casted as an enum. So, but it's actually expecting the value of that. So if I do type value, maybe, is it value or name? I think it's value. Let's try with value. So that's passing, see? It was expecting the value of the enum and not the enum. And I'm guessing that's the same thing with date. Date of birth, that's a carbon object. Let's format that as, I think it was expecting for year, month, and date. Let's try that. Yep, that was the thing. If I just use if I just use date of birth, that's going to give me a carbon object because I'm casting that. So instead, the assertion is expecting the value, the end value that is going to end up in the form, in the field, and that was the date string as year, month, date, because that's what's going to be used in the date picker. Same thing with the type. The form field, that's a select, and the form is expecting the value of the enum and not the enum itself, which is an object. So I have to use the enum object's value, but that's working. So I can see, I can assert that once I'm mounting the edit pet Livewire component and setting the record property using the get route key, which is going to give me the key for the object used in model route binding, the form itself gets filled in appropriately. Do you think it would be easier to debug this kind of errors if you were using an IDE like PHP Storm? That's a good question. I don't think it has to do with the IDE itself, but it has to do with just making sure that the values that you're asserting as are the ones that are. Let me see if I can put it in a different way. It's not about the tool, it's about the language and what values do you use in the test. I'm pretty sure that we would have the same problem. Maybe not so much in... I'm pretty sure we would have the same issues. I mean, it's not an issue, it's just knowing what to assert, what values to assert. I think, maybe. Whoever uses PHP Storm can give me a better, maybe can give a better answer, but yeah, I don't know. Would the IDE tell you the expected type? I don't think it would, at least not in this case, because how is the IDE going to know that name, which is, this is just an array. I'm just passing an array and I have to pass an array of values. But then when I run the test failure is going to tell me, okay, I'm expecting this type and not this type. And that's when you go in and say, okay, yeah, maybe the date of birth, instead of passing a carbon object, instead of a carbon object, I'm expecting a date string, and then you adjust accordingly. Same with the enum. I'm expecting a string, but you're giving me an object. So you go and say, yeah, type is the type is being casted as an object, as an enum class. And then you go and say, yeah, in order to get the value of that instead of the object class, then I use value. So I don't, in summary, I don't think it would be any different with PHP Storm, in my opinion. So I think we can mark this one as done. It can retrieve the pet data for edit. I think that's good. I've been playing around with Rust too much, so the compiler tells you before the code even runs. Yeah. But again, it's in this situation, even if we have a compiler that is giving you the date, the type of the object, using this is not particularly an error. If you pass this as the assertion, that's not going to compile as an error, because yeah, you're just providing a class, or you're just providing a carbon instance, and that's the compiler. I don't think is going to complain about that. It's about the assertion at the end, what the assertion is expecting versus what you are giving to the assertion. But again, I'm not familiar with Rust either, so I could be wrong. All right, so we can retrieve the pet data for edit. Now we need to test that we can actually use that data to update the pet. So let's go ahead and do that. New test. It can update the pet. Not pet data, just pet. I was thinking that maybe we could, in the validation form, in the validation test, sorry, we could use a sequence or a data set because right now I'm just testing the required validation on date of birth and type, but I should also be able to test the name. So maybe using a data set here where we pass the same object with a missing name, a missing type, and a missing date of birth. So yeah, I'm gonna rework this one in a minute after I'm done with this update pet. So what do we need here? Again, we are going to need a pet that is already in the database. So let's copy this from here. And we should also create the new pet data. Or actually, let's just test it in a simpler way, and then we can rework. So now I need to use Livewire test. We're going to again mount that component from pet resource. Pages, edit pet.class. And we're going to pass the record again. With pet get route key. And we can then call the update event. I think that's how it's called. We can assert form. Assert has no form errors. But we do need to update the form. Let's see how do we do that. Let me check the documentation real quick. Saving. So we pass a record and we fill. Yeah, that's the thing. We need to fill the form with the new data, then call save, and then expect. We can do an expectation on the pet data. We use refresh to refetch the data from the database on that same model, and then making sure that the new data matches the data that we just fetched. So yeah, let's try that. So I'm going to refill the form here before calling save, update. Oh, it's save. This is not update, just save. And here I'm going to fill form. Is it fill form? Yeah, fill form. And I'm going to use new data. So the name, I'm going to use plain strings for now, and then I'm going to rework and then use another factory instance. So let's say for the name, new pet name, date of birth. Let's use today's date. Today's the 5th, right? And for the type, let's use one of the types that we have, which is, I think, cat. Let's use cat. Then call save, doesn't have any errors, and then we do expect on pet refresh. Hold on. Oh, there you go. So we can use the name here, then to be new pet name. Then we assert that the date of birth to be, now the database is going to have the time as well, I believe. So let's use this same string here. Like so. And then the type to be cat. And yeah, this is not exactly ideal, but usually when you start testing, it is recommended that you use like specific strings just to make sure that the test fails first and then you get it to pass. Sometimes if you don't use this kind of strings, you might get a pass on a test, but it might not be, it might be a false pass. Instead, if you use specific strings for the values, you make sure that that's the value that you're expecting on the assertion, and that usually leads to a good test fail, and then you can get it to pass. And after you get a pass, then you can go back in and rework that test and stop using magic strings and numbers, etc. And then you make sure that after you rework, your test is still passing. Let's test this. Make sure that it's failing. Well, I don't know if it's gonna fail or not. Probably it's gonna pass. Well, it didn't. So it's failing on the carbon object is identical to, okay, so yeah, again we're date of birth format. So if I'm gonna format it like so, we can do this. Probably gonna fail as well on this one because this is an enum class. So let's use the value again. Okay, that's passing. And this is passing because Filament already, when you create a Filament resource, everything should be working out of the box. That's why we don't get a failing test on this one. We could get a failing test if we don't fill in the cat, for example. Because the cat right now is required, sorry, the pet type is required, so we're going to have a failing test because we didn't modify the pet type. The pet type was a dog from the pet factory, so we didn't modify that, we didn't refill the form, we submitted that, so in the database we ended up with a value of dog, not cat, so the assertion fails, obviously. So at least we know that this is a failure, this is a test pass from the get-go. We don't get any failures, but we are fairly sure that that is a good pass, thanks to Filament. Now we can just rework this, and instead of using magic strings, we can, for example, use new pet here, new pet data. We can still use the factory, but I'm going to modify the state slightly. Let's use another fake name. Date of birth. Let's use fake date. And for the type, I'm still going to use just cat. Then when we fill in the form, we use the new pets data name. Oh, are we using, yeah, we're using create. This should be make, because we don't want this new data on the database, we just want it on the instance. And then we make sure to format this. Oh, and well, this doesn't apply here. I was going to mention that we have a global date in our configuration, but in this case, we should just use a default or a more generic format. Month and day. Just to double check, are we formatting the value or the display value on the resource? We are not. Okay. So we're filling, this should be new pet. Same thing here. Instead of using magic string, we are going to use new pet data down here. And then take this one and use it here. And then the type and use it here. And I expect this to still pass. And it does. Good. Let's run the whole file. And we have now 9 passing tests. And let's go back to this other test for the validation and rework it a bit so that we can pass a data set instead of manually just unsetting or not filling in the new pet's date of birth and type. I also want to make sure that the name is required, and not passing it in will cause a validation error. So let me go, I forget how datasets work. So let's go to the PEST documentation and look at datasets. So we just have to use width, and that's gonna come in as a parameter. But here, instead of using this as a string, I would like to use a factory, pet factory, with different states. Or we could use just arrays. Let me check. Because to fill in the form, all we need is just array of values. So what if we, let's say we use, width, and we can give labels to this. So let's say we use an array. The first one will be missing name. And this will be an array with, sorry, it will be an array with just date of birth. Can I use the new pet here? Doubt it. Let's just use fake. No, but that's not gonna work because the missing assertion is not gonna be. Let's try this. Pet factory. Factory. Then we use state and then set name. And let's just null that out. The only problem that I'm seeing here is that I'm not setting the owner for the pet. Got something in my eye. We are already testing that from the list, we can only see pets that belong to the owner. But we're not testing that we can, for example, guess the pet ID and just get to the edit form. I think I have a test for that. Cannot edit pets that do not belong to the owner. So yeah. I'm kind of lost here. How did I lose you? How did I lose you? Did I lose you with the data sets? Or tell me, how can I help? The dataset? Oh, okay. So datasets. Basically, you can have a test that can run multiple times with different data. So from the documentation, for example, you have a test that expects the email to not be empty, right? But what happens if you need to run that exact same test with different emails? One option would be to create two separate tests, one for each email value. But the better option is to use a dataset, which basically injects different values into the same test. Here, they are injecting two emails into the has emails test, and that value is coming in as a parameter to the test function. So this has email test is going to run twice, one for each of the data sets that you have. And when that test runs, it's going to look like this. It has emails, which is the name of the test, and then with email number 1, same test, it has emails, but with the email number 2. So it's basically just running that same test as many times as there are datasets, and it's passing the value from the dataset as a parameter to the test. In my case, for example, I want to run this validation errors test, but I want, for each of those tests, I want to onset one of the form field values. For example, first test, I want the name to be missing. Second test, I want the date of birth to be missing. In the third test, I want the type to be missing. Instead of me creating three tests, and on those 3 tests onsetting each of those fields, I can create one test and then use datasets to pass a pet factory with a missing name, a pet factory with a missing date of birth, and a pet factory with a missing type. And all of those will be received here. In this case, I'm inspecting a pet. And let's call it new pet. So instead of creating a factory here, I'm creating that pet as a parameter. Okay, so missing name, I should just not use date of birth. So like that. And when you're using datasets, you can not only pass a value, but you can pass a label to that dataset. For example, I'm using missing name as the dataset name. And you'll see how that looks when I run it. Okay, yeah, now I get it perfect. That's the important thing. I don't want to lose anyone. So I have a data set with a missing name. So let's create a new one with a missing date of birth. Finally, last data set would be missing type. And now for the form field, I can just fill all of the fields like this maybe. Yeah. I'm gonna copy this and paste it here. So I'm using the new pet from the parameter from dataset, and the first iteration will have the name as null, second iteration will have the date of birth as null, and the third iteration will have type as null. This is not correctly indentation is wrong here. Much better. Okay. Let's see if this works. A test with description invalidate errors has one argument and no data sets provided. Really? How come? This is the data set? Oh. It's expecting two parameters. Ah, this is the problem. I was using this nomenclature, and that's two parameters, and I should be using this instead. So it'll be here. Instead of a comma, I need to use key value pairs. Do I need to use, I don't need to use this as an array, actually. Okay, so this will be the label for the dataset, and this will be the dataset value, which is just an instance of a bet that is going to be passed as the parameter. That should work. Let's see. Same thing. These forms on create. No data sets provided. That's weird. So strange. Okay, let me try without. Let me try without the label, see what happens. Why are you telling me that no data sets are provided? I'm providing one here using with. No, that's not right. So strange. I'm gonna have to look into this further because I'm following exactly what the documentation is asking me, and yet the width is not catching the dataset values. Yeah, let me go back to the docs real quick. What happens if I just... Let me copy this real quick. I'm gonna copy this test as an example. I'm gonna put it here. Has nothing to do with our pet. Bound datasets. Oh, thank you. That's what I needed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna copy this. Copy that. And then use pet instead. And this will be name null. And then date of birth null. And then type null. All right, let's see if this works. Awesome. Oh, kinda. It's not validating though. What's happening? So it's trying to create the form. It's trying to create the record, but it's failing on database label. Database level. How so? All right, this, first of all, this is the, I should be using state here. Second, should be using make. Ooh, what are you doing? Save. And this, let's use pet class here. All right, let's try that. Haha! Oliver, you're a genius. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to change the name of these datasets to closure, from closure to something more descriptive, sorry. So can I use bound datasets with labels? Yes, apparently you use an array and then you give the label of that dataset at the end. Let's try that. So this is an array. And then here, let's use missing name. Let's take this one again, wrap it in an array, and then missing date of birth. And lastly, missing type. There you go. That's way better. So I'm testing all of the fields when we're creating a pet, and I'm making sure that it has errors when we're missing the name, when we're missing the date of birth, and when we are missing the type. Like that even more. Let's make sure we didn't break anything else. Let's run the entire file. Good, we have 11 tests. Did we test this, that we can update the data? Yes, right there. So mark this as tested. It's complete. Not that, come on. All right, cool. Now we need to make sure that we cannot edit pets that do not belong to the user. So we previously tested that we cannot see pets in the list of pets that do not belong to the current user. And that's here, right? So we cannot use the table in actually clicking on that table row, because that table row of a pet that doesn't have an owner or belongs to a different owner is not going to show up in the list of pets. But if for some reason we guess, because we're using the pet ID for the URL, for the route, if for some reason we guess the ID of a different pet and we type that in the URL and we hit enter, we can still see the form and we can still see the pet information from other pets that do not belong to the user. The expectation there would be that instead of seeing the form with the pet from a different owner, which will allow us to actually update it, we should see a 403 page, meaning that we don't have access to that pet. So let's make sure that that happens, because if we, this test right here is passing, right? But let's take a look at that test, for example. Let's go up. See, we're testing that we can render the edit page, but look at that. Look at this pet. This pet doesn't have an owner, so it means that this pet does not belong to us. But we can still see the form, and we still see we get an OK response from this test, and that should not happen. So let's create another test, and we can make it up here. In fact, should be a kind of a smoke test. Cannot edit pets. That do not belong to the owner. And let's in fact grab this and just create a pet without owner. And now let's grab this assertion and instead of OK, let's, do we have an assert status code? Search status. Yeah, in this case it should be a 403, unauthorized. That's going to fail because that's not currently happening, is it? Yeah. Right, because we're getting we're getting a status code. Wow, we are getting a status code of 200. Now, how do we fix this? Do we have a policy in place? I don't think we do. So with a policy, we are making sure what we can do with a pet, what the user can do with a pet in the current session. And I don't think we have a policy in place, at least not for this one. Let me check. No, we don't. What policies do we have? We have a user policy and a clinic policy. Let's take a look at the clinic policy real quick. Create and update. So yeah, we need a new policy for pets. How will that policy work? Because when we create a policy, we are not creating that policy just for a specific owner, I don't think. When we create a policy, we create it for everyone. So in terms of edit, who has the ability to edit pets that do not belong to the current owner? 1. Admin user can edit everyone. So in the update, the admin user can edit. Doctors can also edit. But if the user role is owner, only the owner can only edit that pet if the owner's ID is equal. If the owner's ID is equal to the pet owner ID. So I think that will work. Let's create a policy. This will be for pet. I believe just using the model name will work. What should the policy be named? Pet policy. What model should this policy apply to? Pet. All right. So let's open the new pet policy. And we do have as parameters who the currently logged in user is. Perfect. So view any. Again. This should return true or false. All right. So let's return. Can we do a match? Let's try a match. And we're going to match user role name. So if the user role name is admin, that's true. If the username is, sorry, the role name is doctor, well, yeah, that's also true. We could just use in array here. What's that? Hmm. No, it doesn't work. Does it work like this? Yes. So when it's an owner, even if it's an admin or a doctor, you can view it, view any record. But if it's an owner, that means that only if why are we not getting a pet here? View any models. This should not be, we should not be using view any, just view. This should be true. This because I do need the pet in this case. So again, admin doctor, yes, you can view the pet. Owner only if the user ID equals pet owner ID. How about create? How would that work? Admin doctors, yes. Actually, this should be true. Anyone can create a pet. Update. A package from Spatty. You mean the which package? The user roles? That should. I mean, if I needed more granularity on users and roles, yes, I would totally recommend using the Spatty package. But since this project only requires role names, using the package seems a bit of an overkill to me. And policies do not require the package in this case. And it has nothing to do with the package. So using policies, I think it's okay for a small project where we're just dealing with role names. But yeah, if your project has or requires a lot more control over roles, and not just roles but roles and permissions for each of those roles, yeah, you should not be using you should not be creating that on your own. Just use the Spatty package and that'll make your life a lot easier. But in our case, using just role names, I think it's enough. Delete. Let's work on the delete right away. Again, Admins and doctors, they can delete pets. Can they? Can a doctor delete a pet? I don't remember. Let's leave it like this. We'll figure it out later. Owners, though, they can only delete pets that belong to them. Restore, we're not using soft deletes. That doesn't apply. Force delete, that doesn't apply either. Save this. So we have the policies in place, and let's see what happens if we test again. Now it works. You know why it works? Because the policy is making sure that if you somehow guess the URL for a pet that doesn't belong to you using the ID, as soon as you get to that page, Filament is going to check the policy for that model and make sure that the policy allows you to view the edit form. If you can edit a pet, you will see the form. But if the policy does not allow you to edit a pet, you will get a 403 response. Now let's go back to the test, because I'm pretty sure that we are going to have a failing test for this other test right here. So let's do run file. And yes, we do have a failing test for this previous test that was previously passing, but now we have a policy, and now it's failing because the test is not setting the owner for the pet. So let's change that. Let's use for this owner user, and the relationship is called owner. So let's run the file again. We should have all tests passing now. No. What happened there? Oh, owner. Call to undefined method owner. Thank you. I can hear everyone screaming like, "What are you doing? Learn to type." Yes. Cool. Good. 12 passing tests. All right. What's next? Let's say you cannot edit pets that do not belong to the owner. That is good. It can validate form errors on edit. All right, this is very similar to the one we had for the create form, but now we want to make sure that the edit form also has all the validation errors taken care of, all the validation taken care of. So let's go back. Let me grab the validate form errors on create. I'm going to copy this because it's very similar. Paste it here. It validate form errors on edit. In this case, this is not going to be a new pet, this is going to be an updated pet. So instead of filling, well, we do need to fill the form, but we do also need a pet already created. So let's grab this, paste it here. So we need a pet first, and we also need to pass that pet as the record for the form. Like so. And this is not for the create pet, this is for the edit pet. And this is updated pet. All right, let's review. Almost. We don't need the database missing, we just need we don't need any of this. As soon as we have an error in the form, that means that we don't have any records changed. So I think that should be enough. So yeah, we are using a data set. We are unsetting or just deleting the name, date of birth, and type on each of those. And then that will be our updated pet. We create one pet in the database, set that pet as the record of the edit form, fill the form with the updated pet data, and then call save. And we assert that when we do that, we have errors in the form. That should be enough. Let's test that. Should be passing. Awesome, perfect. And just to make triple sure, let's go to the pet resource. And then again, let's make the type not required. That should fail on the third data set. All right, so we know that that passing test that we got before, it's actually true. All right, cool. Let's mark this as tested and passed. Finally, final test would be if we can delete a pet. Now there are two ways in which you can delete it, a pet. First one is from the table, and that would require you to have an edit action, but I think this test has already been taken care of, because one, you cannot see a pet that doesn't belong to you in the list. That has already been tested. So if you can't see a record that doesn't belong to you, that means you can take action on that record. So that's a pass. The second option is that you can use the delete action on the edit form. But we have already tested that if the pet does not belong to you, you cannot delete it. So we're covered on that. The only thing that we need to test now is that if the pet does belong to you, that A, you have an action visible to delete that pet on the table, and B, you can actually call that action and delete that pet. In this case, we should test that both on the table and on the form. So from the table, from the list of pets, and you should also be able to delete a pet from the edit form. So let's try with the table. I'm gonna go to, okay, validation. There should be something about deleting here. And this is the test for the edit form. So we create a new record, we mount the edit page, pass the record into the component, call the action, which is the lead action, and then we assert that the model is missing on the database. Let's take care of this one first then. I'm gonna work on delete a pet from the edit form. Okay, so we need a pet. See you, man. Thank you for being here and thank you for your help. I hope to see you again next week. And also remember that probably, I don't know if this is going to be this Wednesday, probably it's going to be this Wednesday, but stay tuned because I'm going to start a new live stream on Wednesday nights. And it's going to be a completely new project. I think the polls that I sent are, both polls are winning. The project that is winning is a learning management system, something like a Latacast or Code Course clone. So I'm going to work that on Wednesday. Stay tuned for that. And if you haven't liked the video or this stream already, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe so that you don't miss the Wednesday stream. And it's not that doesn't mean that the ones on Wednesday, the Sunday stream is going to go away. No, I'm going to do one stream on Sundays for the pet clinic until it's done, and then also on top of that, I'm going to do another stream on Wednesdays for a completely new project. Let me grab the pet creation from here. So let's create a new pet. See you, man. Thank you. Have a great day. Now we need to mount the Livewire component. So we are going to mount the edit pet as the record of that pet, and we need to call action. This is going to be the delete action. Now, which delete action are we going to use? Is going to be filament actions, not filament table actions. That's going to be for the next test. And also not the pages actions, that is deprecated. Yep. Filament actions, delete action. We pass the class and then we use this. Cert database, cert model missing, was it? Yeah, cert model missing, pet. So, in summary, we created a pet in the database for the current owner so that we don't get a 403 in response when we mount the component. So we create that, Then we mount that component, the edit pet component, pass that new pet as a record for that component, call the delete action, which is a button that is on the top right corner. And then we assert that the pet factory, the pet model, is missing in the database. And that's working. Good. So yeah, again, since we already have a policy in place, any user, since we have a policy in place, you can't just render the edit pet. If the pet doesn't belong to you, we're covered on that. But if the pet does belong to you, you can see the edit pet form and click the delete button, and that is also working. Now let's do the table. Let me grab the description from here. It can delete pets from the list of pets. We should make sure of two things. A, there is no guarantee that there is a delete action on the table from the get-go, I think. Usually the edit action is by default. I'm not sure about the delete action. So you should make sure first that on that pet you have a delete action on the row of that pet. So let's make sure of that first, and then we make sure that clicking on that action or calling that action actually deletes the record from the database. What we should do is go back to documentation and let's go to the table builder and visit the testing section right here. Let's go to the actions section here. Calling actions, this is the one that we are going to use. We can delete pets in our example. We create a new record. We mount the list of pets. And then on that, we call the delete action. And the difference between that and the previous test that we did is, first of all, we are calling a table action and passing the action class, but we also have to provide the pet record to that action. And then we assert that the model is missing. There was also a test for making sure that the action is visible. Let's see. Render the pet, display trashed, columns, sorting, searching, state. This is all things that you can test, by the way. In the documentation, you have examples for testing that you can search by a specific column. You can assert the state of a specific column in the table, the existing of a column. You can make sure that you have visible columns based on authorization, descriptions, extra attributes, filters. What else? Actions, calling action. Where was it? I'm sure I've seen it. Executing errors, pre-filling data. I'm sorry if I'm making you dizzy. Oh, here it is. Assert table action not exist, but it's visible. There you go. Assert table action visible. So let's test this first. Sorry. Again, we create a new pet. First and foremost. Then we mount the list of pets. We don't need to pass any records to this. And then, first of all, assert table action visible. This will be delete, and we provide the pet record. Hello, my media, how you doing? So first we assert that we can see a delete action on that pet row so that we can click on it. Then, and that's done with the assert table action visible. Notice that we don't have to pass the action class for this assertion, only the delete, only the action name, which is delete. Then we are going to assert the calling of that action. So we can use call table action delete action class. So let's do call table action, and this is going to be delete action, and that one is coming from filament tables actions. And to that we need to pass the record, which is going to be pet. Now we can assert again model missing using this. And that will assert that the record after has been deleted is missing from the database. So in summary, we create a new pet for the current owner. We mount the list of pets. That's a Livewire component. And we assert that for that pet record, we can see a delete action on that row, meaning that we have a delete button. And then we call that action and assert that once that action has taken place, the pet record is missing on the database. Let's run this. Failed asserting that the table action with the name delete exists on the list of pets. And that's what I was expecting, because when you create a resource in Filament, the delete action is not there by default, only the edit one. So we need to go and add it. Pet resource, table, actions, and we have edit action only. Let's add tables, actions, delete action, make. And I believe if we test this again, it should be passing. Not only we see the action on the table, but calling that action actually deletes the record from the database. Cool, let's make sure that we didn't break anything. Let's run the file. No test found. What the heck? Sometimes. Oh, because we are not. For that to work, I'm using the Better Pest plugin, by the way, if you were wondering. And that allows me to run a specific test, a test file, and run the entire suite for the run file to work, you actually have to be looking at the test file. Look at all those tests passing on. 17 pass tests, perfect. So we can delete a pet from the edit pet form, and we can delete it from the list of pets. Let's mark those two as passed. All right. Let's go back and just run the entire suite, which is just this file. All right, perfect. So there are a few things that we are not testing right now. For example, we haven't tested the avatar for the pet. We should be able to test that when we upload a file and when we set an avatar for the pet, that we can not only update that or upload an avatar for our pets, we should also be able to assert that we see that avatar on the table. So those are two tests that are missing from this, and we are going to work on those next week. I think this week is going to be a shorter stream. So yeah, we are going to work on the rest of the on uploading avatars for pets on next week, and we are going to start testing a new pet resource, or a new resource for the owner, which I believe is going to be the appointments resource, so that a user can. This one's going to be a bit different because I do want to make something different for the appointment. The user should have an easier way to book an appointment by looking for a clinic and then looking for a doctor on that clinic. So I think my initial idea, and I have to see if this works, is maybe a wizard on a resource, so that we can have 3 steps: find a clinic, find a doctor, book appointment. So I'm thinking a wizard would do great on that scenario. So we're gonna work on that next week. Thank you everyone for showing up today. We're gonna cut it here, and again, if you haven't liked this video already, do so now. Subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any notifications, also so that you don't miss the notifications for the new stream. I don't know if it's going to start this Wednesday or next Wednesday. Depends on the research that I'm doing, but probably this Wednesday. So subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a notification. And as always, thank you for being here, and see you in the next one.